Chapter 93 The Bee Curse. Geto grabbed his hair tie off the bathroom sink and wound it around his hair bun. It was a little unkempt, too many little tendrils poking out, but he left it alone. When he brought his arms down, he looked at his wrists. The bruises were almost gone, only a faint trace of the green-blue shade remained. He liked being marked by Gojo in that way. Gojo wasn't trying to hurt him, but his passion caused him to grasp too firmly. It made Geto feel wanted, when Gojo's need to possess him outshone the doubt in his mind. Geto pulled his uniform jacket sleeves down and fixed his collar. He turned to see what Gojo was doing. Gojo was lying on the bed with his hands behind his head. He had buttoned his white shirt crooked, and Geto sighed, looking at the uneven hem. "Satoru, come on," Geto prodded him. It would be nice to not have to rush to school for once, even if he didn't want to sit in the classroom any longer than he had to, drawing stares, even though he kept quiet and stayed out of everyone's way. Gojo slid off the bed and made a show of stretching and yawning. Geto approached him and started unbuttoning his shirt. "Suguru, I like where this is headed," Gojo grinned. "Calm down, I'm fixing it 'cause you buttoned it wrong. Again," Geto scolded. When they were finally ready to leave, Gojo hoisted his backpack over his shoulders and cornered Geto against the door. Gojo was looking at him over the tops of his sunglasses. Geto's breath caught in his throat. Gojo leaned in and kissed him. Geto could feel the longing in his lips. Gojo pressed his pelvis into him, and Geto could feel his arousal. Heat rose to his face, and he was glad his Hakama pants camouflaged his reaction to Gojo. "Why'd you do that?" Geto whispered. How was he supposed to learn anything today with his mind distracted? "Suguru, don't be mad. I couldn't help it. Just think of it as something to look forward to later," Gojo teased. Geto sidestepped him and grabbed his backpack off the floor, trying to regain some composure before they left for school. As they sat through class that morning, Geto kept his head down and did his best to concentrate on what Yaga was saying. Gojo was leaning back in his seat, arms loosely crossed over his chest. When Geto went too long without looking his way, he would move his leg and touch Geto's thigh with his. Geto would finally glance over and Gojo would avert his eyes, but his wide grin gave away that he knew exactly what he was doing. Yaga planned their training for after lunch period. Gojo suspected Geto might need to recharge his social battery, so they picked up some sandwiches and drinks and sat on one of the benches in the courtyard instead of eating in the cafeteria with everyone else. As they walked to Jujutsu headquarters to meet Yaga in the training rooms, Gojo glanced over at Geto, noticing the pink in his cheeks. He reached his arm out and held his hand to Geto's forehead. Geto recoiled, not expecting his touch. "What's going on with you? You're hot again," Gojo asked. "I'm hot and bothered from you this morning," Geto retorted. "So it worked. You couldn't stop thinking about me," Gojo strutted proudly. "How could I forget about you when you're poking at me all the time?" Geto grumbled. Someone cleared their throat behind them. They looked over their shoulders. It was Yaga. "Hello, Yaga-sensei," they said in unison. They exchanged a look before continuing their walk in silence. In the training chamber, there was a small bird cage set by the entrance, but nothing was flying around. Geto looked closer, and there were 4 curses at the bottom of the cage, with a talisman wrapped around each of their yellow, glowing bodies. Yaga opened the cage and retrieved one of the curses, holding the curse with 2 fingers, only touching the talisman. "All you need to do today, Geto, is control it," Yaga explained. "It's a grade 4. Stings if you can't maintain complete domination." In his head, Geto panicked. There was a time when he could command Rainbow Dragon, and it had remained subdued in his curse arsenal since before his hospitalization. Now he didn't know if he could handle the weakest grade of curses. Gojo saw the look in Geto's eyes. "Kid stuff, Suguru. I'm sure you'll get the hang of it again in no time. Easy." Yaga stepped closer to Geto, letting him inspect the curse. Geto couldn't sense anything about it while it was muted by the talisman. "Ready?" Yaga asked. "Yeah, let's go." Geto sounded more confident than he felt. Yaga released the seal, and the red and black sigils flashed and dulled as the parchment loosened around the curse. Yaga let go, and the curse fell from his fingers before it was able to unfold its wings and fly. It looked like a fat bee with a tiny, angry, human-like face, born from everyday petty negativity. The main emotion Geto could sense from it was annoyance. It was the size of Geto's fist. It started to fly away from them, and Geto reached his hand out. The bee spasmed once as if it was stunned. Its buzzing sounded angry. It bobbed up and down in the air, glaring at Geto before it turned around and tried to fly off. Geto reached again, feeling the pull stronger this time, but not enough. The bee circled around faster than Geto expected it to and lashed a tentacle out, stinging Geto's hand. "Son of a bitch!" Geto exclaimed. He wasn't expecting that level of pain from something so small. Gojo held his finger out and subdued the curse, stilling it in mid-air while he checked on Geto. "I'm okay," Geto assured him, wringing the pain out of his hand. "Gojo, don't interfere," Yaga warned. "Sorry, Sensei," Gojo sighed. He waited until Geto was ready and let the bee go. Geto reached out stronger, and the bee paused in the air, buzzing angrily, but unable to move. Then Geto's connection faltered, and the bee came at him again. He tried to regain control as it dove toward him, but he wasn't fast enough, and it stung him again before it took off in the other direction. "Fuck!" Geto grunted, and he followed the curse. Gojo shifted his weight from one leg to another, watching. He kept his arms folded in front of his chest to stop him from butting in. Geto extended his arm and was able to finally subdue the bee, feeling its energy fight back against his pull. He didn't know how long Yaga wanted him to maintain control. He brought his arm in. The curse drew in with his movement. He felt something else course through his system, and he pulled the curse in closer, almost touching it with his fingertips. His breath quickened, and he was about to pull in again when he heard Yaga's stern voice call out, "Stop!" and Gojo's footsteps run towards him. Geto's control on the bee faltered with the interruption, but Gojo stopped it from advancing on him. "Suguru, don't absorb it," Gojo panted. It wasn't until Gojo's grip closed around his wrist that Geto realized what he was doing. His breath stuttered. That was muscle memory, reflex, hunger, habit. A part of him that he tried to bury had come to the surface. If he hadn't been stopped, he would have consumed the curse. That's all he was when it came down to it. Just a receptacle for everything ugly in the world. Except for Gojo. When he took Gojo in, it was the only beautiful thing he could say he had inside. The thought hollowed him out. He looked at his hands, the same hands that once devoured curses without hesitation. How many steps am I from becoming that version of me again? As the shock wore off, a different truth settled in his chest. He had stopped. Not alone, but he hadn't followed through. That meant there was still space between who he was and who he refused to be again. He had to believe that change was possible, even for him. But as he followed Gojo out of the chamber, he could still feel the echo of that instinct in his palm, like a hunger waiting for him to slip again.